That's definitely going to help us accomplish this debt-free goal and really hammer home the fact that we're empowering ourselves in accomplishing and managing these debts. My name is George Saradakis. I'm an associate at Hirsch Financial Services, and today we're going to talk about one of the more emotionally charged topics in personal finance. It's a topic that carries anxiety, shame, guilt, and one that's actually harder to address rationally than most. I'm talking about debt management. It's an issue that carries math as well as behavioral components. And today we're going to look to see how we can address both in a very efficient, solvable way. We want to make sure that we're implementing a strategy that is something that we can implement and we can continue to carry forward for the rest of our lives. And this all starts with understanding the types of debts that we have. We want to make sure that we understand and take a complete inventory of the types of debts that we have, how much of each debt we have, with whom we carry these debts. So those would be the banks, and the interest rates that are associated with each. So this could look something like I have a credit card that has a $3,000 balance at 24% interest rate with Bank of America. Then I have a mortgage with ABC Bank, and there's $500,000 on it, and it carries a 6% interest rate. This would be an example of the inventory that we would be implementing. So we want to make sure we capture all four of those components, but we also want to make sure that we understand the types of debts that we have. So these would be things like secure debt. These are debts that are typically backed by a physical asset, like your mortgage is backed by your home, your car loan is backed by your car. These are debts that typically carry lower interest rates, but reclaimable by the bank if we were to default on these loans. Unsecured debt, on the other hand, are things like your student loans, credit cards, personal loans, where they tend to carry higher interest rate than the secured debt because there's no physical asset that's backing these debts. For instance, your bank is not going to come and reclaim your credit card, or the federal government is not going to come and reclaim your college degree. So because there's no physical asset that's securing these loans, they tend to carry higher interest rates. Revolving debt, such as credit cards or lines of credit, tend to carry fluctuating balances, and the costs of which are harder to pin down on a month-to-month basis. Whereas installment debts, such as student loans or car loans or a mortgage, tend to carry a set payment on a monthly basis and also carry with them a set endpoint. So installment debts for a mortgage tend to be, let's say, 30 years, or a car loan tends to be maybe 4 or 5 years. Student loans are 10. So we pay these debts in installments, and they're predictable on a monthly basis. So when we take a step back and evaluate our entire picture, and we have a total understanding of the total debts, the types, the average interest rates, it becomes a lot easier for us to implement debt navigation strategies. So when we implement these strategies, we want to understand what kind of debts we want to eliminate and the ones that we want to manage, because not all debts carry the same urgency. Interest rate is typically the deciding factor in all of these. So we want to tend to eliminate credit card debts most aggressively, because credit card debts tend to carry with them the highest interest rate, which is usually at least 20 to 25% on an annual basis. And it's the most expensive debt that we carry on average. And this is because no investment tends to beat the interest rate that the credit cards carry. Seldom do we have an investment that returns 20 to 30% year over year reliably and predictably. So high interest personal loans, or again, any other unsecured debts that tend to carry high interest rates, are the ones that we want to tend to eliminate first. These also include things like payday loans or buy now, pay later services. Debts that we want to manage strategically would be things like our car loans, mortgage, or student loans that tend to carry lower interest rates. Student loans specifically, if we carry federal student loans that we may want to have forgiven through various programs, these are the ones that we want to be very strategic in managing, because we want to be able to pay the least amount on a monthly basis so we have the most amount that's forgiven at the end of the period. So when we build out this debt management framework, we want to make sure that we're comparing interest rates of our various debts and compare it to the expected return that we have on our investments. So if we have a mortgage that carries a 4 or 5% interest rate, we may have investments that return more than 4 or 5%. If we carry a car loan that carries about a 4 to 7% interest rate, there may be investments built into our portfolio that return higher than the interest rate that we're paying on a car loan, similar to student loans. The psychological dimension of this debt management strategy is that some people feel extremely strongly about being completely free and clear of debt. And that's not entirely a bad thing. It just alters how we may approach the debt management strategy for the medium to long term. And when we implement these strategies, there are two proven methods that work. The first is called the avalanche method. That's when we approach the highest interest rate debt first. And this would tend to be things like our consumer debt, such as credit cards, payday loans, personal loans, etc. This is when we pay minimum on lower outstanding interest rate debt and really put our focus into those higher interest rate debts. And so if the total minimum of all of our debt is, let's say, $1,000 a month, we may want to take an additional X $100 and put it towards our credit card loans or our payday loans or our personal loans, and make sure that we're clearing that debt out first. And then we take that chunk and we apply it to the various other debts in descending interest rate order. So if the next highest loan outside of our credit cards becomes our student loans, then we take that additional funding and that total payments that we're putting towards the credit cards and we're putting that towards the student loans. And then when the student loans are paid off, then maybe we go towards the car loan if that's still an outstanding issue. And then so on and so forth until we reach the lowest interest rate, which tends to be our mortgage at the end of the day. This is the most mathematically optimal approach to repaying debt because it minimizes the total interest rate that's paid over time. And it's best for those who have an analytical approach and don't necessarily need to celebrate the small wins, like those who are going to appreciate the next repayment strategy. So the challenge here is that it could feel slow over time, but we're going to appreciate the fact that we're paying the least amount of interest over the course of all of those debts that we're looking to tackle. On the other hand, we have what's called the snowball method. The snowball method takes a similar approach to the avalanche, except instead of attacking the highest interest rate debt first, we're actually paying the smallest balances first. So that would look something like if I have a $500 credit card and then a $1,000 credit card, but the $500, even if it carries a 22% and the $1,000 carries a 27%, I'm going to attack the $500 credit card first and get a psychological dopamine hit by paying off that $500 and seeing that balance come to zero. It's a small victory. So I can take that and then apply that $500 towards that $1,000 credit card and pay more towards that, and then continue the cycle similar to that of the avalanche method. This strategy works best for people who need to see visible progress, and it helps us to remain motivated in understanding that we're doing the best thing that we can possibly do, and it helps us reinforce and remain motivated with regards to paying off our debts and accomplishing that goal. The challenge and the downside here is that compared to the avalanche method, we're going to be paying more interest over time. But we do get that dopamine kick and that psychological benefit that we are seeing that visible progress, unlike the avalanche method. Now, there is a way to approach debt repayment in both ways. We could take the snowball approach for the first 2 or 3 debts and really get that momentum going. And then once we feel like we're capable and empowered in paying off our debts, then we shift to the avalanche approach, whereby now we attack in a descending interest rate approach and pay off the highest interest rate that's left on all of our outstanding debt at that point in time. The key here is to utilize a method and a strategy that works best for us. If the avalanche method works best for us, then we want to take that. If it's let's start with the snowball, and then once we feel like we're capable and empowered in doing so, then we approach it in the avalanche method. Or maybe it's an entire snowball method approach. We have to make sure that it's something that works best for us because we're going to need to stick to it for an extended duration of time, depending on how much debt that we have. Another effective way that we can approach this debt strategy is to enroll in automated bill pay for debts that we want to just pay minimum payments towards, such as a mortgage or a car loan or student loans, etc. Because that also takes the decision fatigue out of um, paying off these loans, or maybe we forget about a loan and we end up risking defaulting on that. So we want to make sure that we're also utilizing as many tools as possible when it comes to paying off and taking care of these debts in a strategic way. So that's all well and good. How do we actually build this plan? So a debt repayment strategy has four components. We've already mentioned the inventory, where we take a total picture of all the debts that we have outstanding. We implement the strategy that works best for us, whether it's avalanche, snowball, or a combination of the two. We want to make sure that we set aside an extra payment amount, regardless of either approach. If we're able to afford an additional $300 a month towards repaying these debts in an effort to be debt free, then that's how much that we're pre-committing to repaying our debts and putting that goal. And then finally, we want to make sure that we're giving ourselves a realistic and workable timeline for achieving these debts. If we want to be completely debt free tomorrow, that's not necessarily something that's realistic. But maybe we give ourselves 36 months to be completely free and clear of high interest rate consumer debts. That's a bit of a better workable timeline, especially given how much that we may have in outstanding debts. So, how do we find this extra $300 a month or whatever the pre committed amount is? That gets back to our other video regarding cash flow. We want to see how we can free up as much of our cash flow as possible, whether it's doing a subscription audit and finding inefficiencies there, finding subscriptions that we don't normally use through entertainment purposes or what have you. Maybe we shop our fixed expenses like our insurance or our cell phone bill or anything like that, and seeing how we can free up that additional $100, $200, $300 a month and use that money towards paying off our debts. So these temporary lifestyle adjustments, these temporary maybe discomforts, maybe we're not able to go out to eat twice a week, maybe we have to bump that down to once a week or once every other week. That's definitely going to help us accomplish this debt-free goal and really hammer home the fact that we are empowering ourselves in accomplishing and managing these debts. Maybe we find a way to make additional income, whether it's a side hustle or flipping stuff on Facebook Marketplace, or just trying to find different ways to make additional income and take that income and apply it towards our debts. Another underutilized tool when it comes to debt repayment is utilizing any windfalls. These would be things like a tax refund or a quarterly bonus. Having that additional money come to us can be used towards repaying these debts. So if we get $1,000 as a tax refund in April, we can take that $1,000 and apply it towards our outstanding credit cards and then maybe eliminate one entirely. And now we just shift on to the next one. And that's a huge win because we just saw ourselves eliminate a huge credit card bill and get a big weight off of our shoulders. So being able to take big windfalls, or even if it's a small windfall, and apply it towards our debt is going to make us feel like we're capable of accomplishing that goal and managing these debts. Making sure that we're not neglecting other areas of our personal finance, making sure that we maintain an emergency fund, making sure that we're taking advantage of our employer benefits through our 401k. In the pursuit of paying off our debts, we want to make sure that we're not neglecting other areas as well. Maintaining an emergency fund, especially while we're trying to maintain debt, if something were to happen unexpectedly, we don't want to have to turn towards our credit cards and run that bill back up. That's just going to make us feel defeated because now we're battling an uphill battle again with a higher balance. We want to make sure that we have enough of an emergency cushion to help offset any unexpected expenses and not have to turn to the credit cards while we're still paying those off. So to wrap all of this up, we want to make sure that when we're managing our debts, we have the right framework in place. We want to make sure that we're creating a strategy that works best for us. We want to make sure that we take inventory of our debts. We want to make sure that we are being strategic in our approach and making sure that we're selecting a method that works best for us, whether it's avalanche method, snowball method, or otherwise. We want to make sure that we have enough of a back support in place through an emergency fund, so we're not taking on additional credit card debt and making ourselves feel defeated if something unexpected were to occur. And we also want to make sure that we're not neglecting other areas of our financial lives, such as taking advantage of employer match 401ks. So we want to make sure that we understand all of our debts. We want to make sure that we understand the types of debts that we have, and we want to make sure that we understand the interest rates and the outstanding balances. With all of that being said, I hope this helps. I hope that it helps you better understand your own debt situation and maybe put your own debt strategy in place for yourself. If you think this helped, please subscribe, comment below for future video topics that you'd like to see, like, and follow me on the other platforms, Instagram and LinkedIn. And I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you so much.